After days of your party trekking aimlessly through the maze-like cavernous tunnels of the Underdark, it is a welcome sight to be finally greeted with a cave chamber full of beautiful glowing crystals. However, this chamber's residents show themselves, and the flame of your joy is quickly suffocated into fear. A bipedal, four-armed creature slinks toward you in curiosity. Its many eyes fidget sporadically in different directions, flickering through different colors, mirroring the glowing crystals in the walls. The more fearful your expression turns, the wider its inhuman grimace stretches across its face as it cackles quietly to itself, never breaking eye contact. Small glowing portals in the cavern walls welcome more of these creatures to surround your group, and as the cackling grows louder, you fear that it might be the last thing you hear before you're overwhelmed and torn limb from limb. Hello, I'm Tom the DM, and today we are going to break down a custom encounter made by yours truly. This encounter features a homebrewed creature called the Forgotten, and is designed to be a subterranean, fast-paced skirmish to get your party thinking and moving. In this video, we are going to be breaking down the Forgotten's stat block, layer, battle strategies, and go over some narrative elements as well. So let's get into it. The lore behind the Forgotten is a tragic tale that I've created for my own homebrew campaign that I've been running for years. They were once a devout group of soldiers that took up a binding oath to protect an ancient artifact. As long as this artifact needed protection, old age could not take them, basically making them immortal. However, as time ravaged on, their sanity began to dwindle in their isolation, and eventually they tried to take the artifact for themselves. What they did not know was that a curse would take hold of them should they willingly break their oath. The curse mutated and demented them until they were no longer distinguishable from vile monsters. Now they lurk in their domain, still guarding the artifact against their will, waiting for the next group of adventurers to make their victims. In their mutation, they became influenced by their environment, which in this case is riddled with magical growing crystals that radiate energy. This form of their mutation can be seen in some of their abilities. Speaking of which, let's take a look at their stat block. The Forgotten stat block is pretty straightforward. They're designed to be easy to run from an action economy perspective because you are going to be managing at least a few of them at any given time. Starting with basic attributes, the Forgotten have a hefty speed of 40 feet with the ability to climb. They're resistant to almost all elemental damage, as well as piercing, slashing, and bludgeoning from non-magical attacks. Let's hop over to its action economy. The Forgotten uses its action for one thing: relentlessly swiping at its enemies with all four of its arms. It can use every arm to make a claw attack with its multi-attack feature. Because it's an extremely mobile creature, it can use its bonus action to dodge, dash, or disengage, allowing it to get in and out of skirmishes quickly. And then its threat detection reaction combines both of the previous abilities. Whenever one of the Forgotten allies is killed, the Forgotten can use its reaction to move to the assailant and make one attack. All of these actions make for a pretty complete round of action economy for the Forgotten, but what makes it really deadly are its innate abilities. With its passive Overwhelm ability, when the Forgotten makes a claw attack, it receives a +2 bonus to hit for every additional Forgotten that is adjacent to the target. This is where their power in numbers really shows itself. Even with just a few of the Forgotten surrounding one enemy, their attack bonus can get extremely high. Not to mention, if you're using flanking rules, these guys are barely ever going to miss an attack. And to add to the pain, the Forgotten have an innate ability called Element Retribution. Essentially, after a Forgotten takes elemental damage, they absorb it, becoming immune to it, and then adding a d6 of that damage to every one of their claw attacks. Sidebar, if you're looking to find the stat block of the Forgotten, you can find it on D&D Beyond in the homebrew section, or if you're looking to download or print the stat block, you can find it for free on my Patreon. Anyways, it's easy to see that if the party doesn't start adapting their strategy to hinder the Forgotten's battle tactics, this encounter can get very ugly very fast. Speaking of battle tactics, let's talk about them. The Forgotten, from conception, is designed to be extremely mobile and work better in numbers. One of these creatures alone is a pretty trivial task to take down, but when a player character finds themselves surrounded by even a few of them, they're in deep trouble. They almost have this hive mind mentality, working together flawlessly, flocking over to one single enemy and then moving on to the next. They were once a cohesive group of soldiers after all, and some of that instinct has stayed with them through their mutation. When talking about actual strategies to implement in combat, I'm going to use an instance where there are 6 Forgotten. Now obviously, depending on what level your party is, you can scale their numbers up or down and it still should balance out pretty well. When initiative is rolled, split the Forgotten into 2 different groups. Tracking all 6 separately would be a nightmare for you, but allowing them all to go on the same initiative might be a little too deadly. Splitting them will give the party a little bit of leeway to strategize mid-combat as well. And that's what we want, right? The Forgotten have a high potential to TPK a party, but that's only if the party doesn't adapt to overcome the Forgotten's abilities. At the start of combat, if a player character begins to attack the Forgotten before they get a chance to go, or just willingly runs into the fray, they will definitely be the first target of all of the Forgotten. It should take the party at least one entire round to realize that these creatures actually get stronger as they overwhelm a single target, so they will likely begin adapting come the second round. And unfortunately for the Forgotten, the combat strategy that they use is also the most effective strategy to use against them. If the party starts singling out specific Forgotten and eliminating them methodically, their attack power decreases with every lost ally. Fortunately, with the Forgotten's threat assessment ability, they can make quick work of any ranged assailants that are picking off their numbers. Taking advantage of this reaction ability will surely turn the adrenaline rush that the wizard feels from taking down one of the Forgotten into fear when they've suddenly been surrounded. Let's talk about mobility. I've stated multiple times in previous videos how I hate it when I'm running an encounter and the party and enemies get gridlocked into just trading blows until one side dies. So I designed the Forgotten with mobility in mind. Like you saw in the stat block, they have a very high speed and the ability to dash and disengage as a bonus action. Combine this with the close quarters layout of their lair and they should be able to reach any party member within their turn. Their high speed gives them the power to confuse the party about where they might flock to at any moment, and the only time they should be grouped up is when they are ripping one of the party members to shreds. Speaking of confusing the party, let's talk about their lair. The Forgotten's lair is a series of caverns and tunnels that have color-changing crystals embedded into the walls. Visually, it's designed to be very stimulating for the party to look at. But those bright colors will only add to the chaos when the battle starts. Additionally, the way to navigate these caverns isn't so simple. There is a series of arcane gates that serve as the passage to different chambers. Where each gate leads is a mystery, as it almost never ports you right to the other side. This can be used to the party's advantage, getting across the map quickly, or to their detriment when they end up in a completely different chamber trapped alone with multiple Forgotten. The party's goal in this encounter, of course, is to just simply locate the chamber that contains the artifact that they're pursuing, but it gets a little more complicated. There is one lair action that occurs every round on initiative count 20. On this lair action, have a player roll a d4, and that will determine the configuration of where each portal leads during that round. Of course though, if you want a bit more simplicity, you can dispose of the lair action and just stick to one configuration of the portals. Now, as a DM, configuring these portals can be a very hefty task, but luckily, I've done the heavy lifting for you. I've mapped out all 4 different portal configurations in one document available on my Patreon. You will have a blast watching your party frantically run through portals trying to evade the Forgotten and figure out which one of these leads to the chamber with the artifact. Just make sure you travel together. Let's talk about some narrative elements. Tying the Forgotten into your campaign can actually be a fairly simple task. There's only a few big narrative points that need to be tied in. First, the Forgotten guard an artifact. Now whatever that artifact is completely up to you as the DM, but the party just needs something to be looking for while they are navigating through the portals. Second, the Forgotten's lair is cavernous, so it makes the most sense to have your party traverse deep underground, through a mountain, or something along those lines. But other than that, let your imagination run wild. In my campaign, the party was in the Shadowfell, which made the rainbow crystals stand out even more. And lastly, the backstory. Feel free to use the lore that I explained at the beginning of the video, but you can always switch it to better match your game. Additionally, the Forgotten are monstrous enough creatures to not need an entire tragic backstory, but stuff like that does add to the world building. Ultimately, the narrative is up to you as the DM. I designed the Forgotten to be a deadly boss fight for my party that kept them constantly moving, strategizing, and overall engaged in the session at hand. We often see climatic battles in D&D be focused around one big enemy, but when you split that into multiple smaller enemies, it can add a change of perspective. And to all the DMs that end up running the Forgotten, please let me know how it went. I had a blast running these guys for my party, but I'm curious to see how it plays out differently for others. If you found value in this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel so you never miss a release, and consider joining my Patreon as well. For only a few dollars a month, you'll gain access to additional resources for all of my monthly encounters and so much more. You can find the link where the links are. Otherwise, I hope this helped, and I'll see you next time.